So I always try to see things in a very balanced way, but balance doesn't mean that you put two things on the opposite end of a scale. You just put two things they are on the opposite ends of a scale, but they're not necessarily opposites. They're more complementaries. So when you try to find balance, it's not necessarily that you balance darkness and light. It could be, but you don't put them necessarily opposite to one another. So with being content, I think the balance there between, if there are two opposite ends of that scale, the one is a kind of just being at peace with yourself, just looking back and then appreciating what your journey brought you to become on the one side, and on the other side maybe still a little bit of restlessness, so that more of your potential can be released. Because if it's just the one side, you can go in a really like God's water or God's akker attitude. No, I don't care. It doesn't matter. So whatever I do is not going to make a difference, kind of. So if you lean too far towards this side, being at peace with yourself, if you lean too far towards this side, you might be so performance driven, so trying to achieve and attain and acquire, that you lose the peace on the other side. So I think if you can strike in life a kind of a balancing middle point between, as I said, on the one side being at peace with yourself, happy with your journey, and on the other side a little bit of restlessness, to still think that there is more to you and still more can be expressed by you, and you can still do more with this life given to you. If one can get that balance, I think you're content. But the part of getting there is actually to make peace with yourself as a person. But that's hard, because it depends on what kind of person you are. You would either gravitate again, if you talk about a balance and the opposite ends of a scale or complementary ends of a scale, that one would tend to lean towards a side of just embracing all the greatness that you are, and then neglecting or denying or suppressing the development areas that you also carry around within yourself. And then you get negative people, they turn around and they rather look at all the bad in them. And in that process they might neglect all the greatness in them. So it's also trying to create that kind of balance for yourself in terms of the way that you look at yourself. The way that you look at yourself is such a fundamental way of looking in life. It's such an essential thing. The way I look at my pen here is not really important. It is important because otherwise I can't use it for the purpose it was created. The way I look at this glass or the screen behind me, or the way I look at the weather, that plays maybe a bit more of an important role. But the way I look at me, or in your case the way you look at you, yourself, is fundamental compared to many other things that you can look at. Because that determines so much of the life that you live. It sort of gives so much either opportunity to live a life of greatness, or taking away from a life of greatness that was possible. Because all life is great. But it depends very much on the way you look at yourself. You think about yourself. Whose voices whisper in your head as to who you are. Whose voices do you listen to? It's very important that you make that kind of distinction for your own life. You can't listen to all voices that have ever spoken things about you, or said some things to you, or tried to define you. Parents can in a moment say something that can last a lifetime, and it's very destructive. That thought actually opened up a new avenue for me to think with. Now, the other day, because as a life coach, executive coach, especially in the life coaching part of my whatever I do, my career, I would sometimes meet someone. Now, if you calculate, this is the thinking that lies behind it. I would sometimes sit with someone and I think, gee, if I were to calculate in your 50 years a person, let's say the person is 50, and if I were to calculate like you, how many hours you've been alive in those 50 years? It's a lot. It's a lot of hours. So now they come and sit with me in 1 hour, and then afterwards they don't come back to me. I usually don't like that kind of scenario. I usually tell a client or a potential client, listen, you must see me at least for 6 sessions in a time span of 2 months or so. Because I need to see you, you need to see yourself, I need to create momentum, I need to understand your world, that kind of thing. So a person would come and sit with me in an hour and I never see them again. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, that person doesn't understand her own growth, doesn't understand becoming, growing, developing. Or, and this is the other thought I've sometimes entertained, but I wasn't convinced of it. Hell, I'm that good. I'm that good.
1 session.
1 session, 1 hour with me, you sorted. But I would go there laugh about it, laugh to myself about it, because I can't see that 1 hour with me could make such a difference. Now, the avenue of thinking that actually opened to me is that I'm listening books. I don't get a lot of time to read, but so I listen to books, and I've been listening to a book on trauma and a certain approach in therapeutic intervention, how to deal with trauma. And they talk about, and they do some case studies. It's actually 2 clinical psychologists. The one was a priest, so he's got a kind of a spiritual slant to it, which I find very refreshing. And they talk about incidents, and then they would, in a case study, describe an incident of a child, because children's worlds are very open, not populated with a lot of understanding for what happens.
Innocent, yeah.
Very innocent, that's the good word, very innocent. And then in one incident, one traumatic experience, it's an experience, it's not traumatic until the child defines it like that, but the child doesn't go and sit down and say, okay, that was traumatic, that wasn't traumatic. The child just experienced the pain and the brokenness of this situation. And the avenue that actually opened up for me is that within 10 minutes, within half an hour, within an hour, something can happen in your life, especially when you're a child, that you carry with you for a lifetime. So it might be true that sitting with me for an hour might be an experience that carries you for a lifetime. Yeah. So I sort of drew some strength and comfort, some, just something good out of that.